Hi, this is Greg. Look for my book, The Agile Brand, on Amazon or on my website at theagile.world. Welcome to the first episode of the Agile World podcast. I'm Greg Kihlstrom. I'm a customer experience and digital strategy expert, currently working at Yes and, a marketing agency outside DC. I recently wrote a book called The Agile Brand and have been talking a lot about the brand-consumer relationship. This podcast is going to explore that in a number of different ways, and really starting at the basics of what is branding and why we brand, and go all the way through the changing dynamic between consumers and brands. In this first episode, I'm going to talk a bit about what is branding and start at the very beginning. And I think it's important over the course of this podcast that we establish a vocabulary to talk about things. And this episode is actually about brand as vocabulary, but I thought over the course of the next several episodes, we're going to be using similar terms, and I'm going to be referring to things in specific ways. So in the spirit of vocabulary, I wanted to start with this idea that an important aspect of branding is that we are really giving the words to consumers of how we want them to describe us. There's an often used quote by Jeff Bezos of Amazon that says, "Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room." And I think that's, while it's used in a lot of different aspects in a lot of different ways, I think in context of what I'm talking about brand as vocabulary, while there's a lot of dollars and effort spent branding and marketing, advertising, really getting a message out that a company wants other people to see, at the end of the day, it's really about what people, how people talk about you and how people really come to understand you. The opportunity for branders and marketers, though, is if you give them the right words, they will use them. If you give them the right thoughts, the right meanings, all of those types of things that are meaningful to them and actually come into play in their daily lives, they will adopt those and they will use those. They'll share them with their friends. They'll basically repeat what you give to them. If it's not genuine and authentic, they're not going to use them. It's going to fall flat. It's going to be marketing dollars not spent well. This idea of vocabulary comes into play in a lot of different ways. So, for instance, brands like Kleenex or Google or others, their brand names have actually become part of the vocabulary that we use in our daily lives. So, when you have a cold, is it a tissue or is it a Kleenex? When you perform a search online, do you Google it, or do you search? Do you use a search engine? So the idea that we're actually teaching people not only our names, but the way that we want people to think about us and talk about us, that all comes into play with this idea of giving people a vocabulary. Vocabulary becomes really critical in a world of word of mouth as well. So it's not only what I think about something, it's not only mentally am I reaching for a Kleenex, but it's also when I talk to someone about a brand. What do I think when what do I say to my neighbor when I think about a brand like Nike versus one of their competitors? I know what I see. I know what they're trying to communicate in their branding, and whether it sometimes may be social issues or things like that. What they say, how they say it, really paints a picture in my mind, and I share that with others that I meet. If it's not genuine, it's going to fall flat. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm not going to talk about that with others. So ultimately, branding is the vocabulary you use to give a lasting impression in someone's mind. It's not about superficial things. It's not about catchphrases. Really, and I'll discuss this in later episodes in more detail, but successful brands are companies that find a way to be meaningful in someone's lives. When you connect a message, when you connect whether it's a tagline, a mission, a vision, all of those things, those fundamental branding 101 concepts, when you're actually able to connect those with a problem that someone has, a challenge that someone needs to overcome, it becomes meaningful, it becomes lasting, it becomes that picture in their mind. Your brand replaces that object. Again, the Kleenex example, your brand actually replaces a verb, a noun in someone's mind because you're useful, because you're meaningful to them. So over the next couple episodes, I'm going to go through a few more aspects of really what is branding and what makes a successful brand. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please rate the show on iTunes or contact me through my website at theagile.world. You can find my books, The Agile Brand and The Agile Web, on Amazon and on my website at theagile.world.